I came home from the biggest deal of my career to find 15 black garbage bags lined up at my front gate, my family standing behind them like executioners, and inside those bags, everything I owned was gone. But they didn't know the storm I was about to unleash. The taxi door clicked shut, and I stepped onto the cracked sidewalk, the sun casting its lazy afternoon warmth across the neighborhood I had once called home. The exhaustion from the 3-hour flight from Seattle was already melting into my bones, but I straightened my shoulders, clutching the silk scarf in one hand, a gift for my mother in robin's egg blue, her favorite color, and my laptop bag in the other, heavy with the contracts for the $2.3 million marketing deal I had just closed. This was supposed to be a triumphant return. My victory, tangible, something I had earned through late nights, endless client calls, and the kind of focus that consumed everything but sleep. I froze. 15 black garbage bags, each industrial-sized and bulging like silent sentinels, were lined up perfectly at the edge of the driveway. Their presence was deliberate, their symmetry almost artistic in its cruelty. Behind them, my mother and 3 siblings stood on the front lawn, forming an unbroken human wall. Mom's arms were crossed, her chin tilted with the same imperious poise that had tightened my stomach since childhood. My siblings, Marcus, Elise, and Darren, flanked her like lieutenants executing a meticulously rehearsed formation. Across the street, Mrs. Peterson had stopped deadheading her roses, and the Millers had paused their car washing. My entire world had become a public spectacle of humiliation. "What's going on?" My voice felt distant, foreign, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. Mom's expression didn't flicker. "Kendra, you're 26. It's time to be on your own," she said, each word clipped, measured, and cold. The words fell like a hammer. The garbage bags weren't just containers, they were the blunt instruments of my exile. My fingers tightened around the silk scarf. In that moment, the contracts in my bag, the culmination of months of sleepless effort, felt suddenly weightless, irrelevant against the gravity of what was unfolding. Dad had died when I was 8. His will had divided the family home into equal shares, though Mom had retained the deed in her name. I remembered sitting in the lawyer's office as a child, swinging my legs on the chair too tall for me, being told I owned 1/5 of the house. My siblings had left one by age 23, building lives and homes of their own, while I lingered. I paid more than my fair share of utilities and taxes, yet I had been trapped in this house, a perpetual child in their eyes. "And why now?" I asked, forcing steadiness into my voice. "Why like this? No notice." Marcus stepped forward, hands shoved into his pockets. His attempt at reason sounded hollow. "It's to teach you responsibility, Kendra. You need this push." Mom sighed, the faintest wrinkle of exasperation forming between her eyebrows. "The house is sold. The new owners want immediate possession. The bags contain your things." "Sold." The word hit me with the precision of a scalpel. "Without my consent? I'm a legal co-owner." The weight of the contracts returned, but this time, it was armor, a shield against the absurdity of their betrayal. "You're being dramatic," Mom replied, her tone deceptively light. "We've discussed this for months." "No, not with me," I said, my voice rising slightly. My siblings avoided my gaze, staring at the hedges, the sky, the ground, anywhere but at me. Mom pursed her lips. "Your share of the proceeds will be reduced. You've stayed longer than the others. We've calculated the difference in rent you should have paid." The world tilted. My home, my inheritance, was being stolen in broad daylight, and I had been blind to it while focusing on my career. I walked toward the bags. Winter sweaters, books, shoes, the silk scarf I had bought for Mom, crumpled amid the chaos. A small piece of normalcy remained in my pocket, yet my bones felt as if they were settling after a break, painful but clarifying. "I'll make several trips," I said, the statement firm, no longer seeking permission. I was taking control of the one thing left, my own dignity. As I lifted the third bag, a folded paper slipped from between photo albums. The glossy listing stared up at me. The house I grew up in, sold without my knowledge. The listing date, 2 months ago. 2 months. While I had been working 60-hour weeks, closing deals, paying taxes, and trusting my family, they had photographed my private world, preparing to erase me from it entirely. My phone buzzed. Elise. Just checking if you need help moving your things. Marcus said you're being difficult. Scrolling back through messages I had missed, the threads revealed weeks of planning, timing coordinated with my career milestones, screenshots of the listing, and discussions about ensuring I would be too busy to interfere. Every step had been calculated. The realization hit like ice water. They had orchestrated my eviction to coincide with the pinnacle of my professional success, ensuring maximum humiliation and minimum resistance. I should have been angry. My pulse drummed with righteous fury, but beneath it simmered a cold clarity. This betrayal wasn't just cruel, it was an opportunity. Later, at Harper's apartment, I sat cross-legged on her living room floor, laptop balanced on my knees, my mind mapping strategy and vengeance in equal measure. Social media feeds displayed my family celebrating, toasting at Giovanni's Italian restaurant, their triumph posted for the world. I swallowed hard. I wasn't invited. My inheritance, my home, my family's support, all stripped away, but in this void, a spark ignited. Mrs. Peterson called from across the street. Need any help? I forced composure. I'm fine, but I wasn't. The next day, apartment hunting became a grim parade of noisy radiators and stained ceilings. Yet amidst the despair, flickers of possibility appeared. James, a property manager, recognized my professional accomplishments. For the woman who saved my brother's business, I have a place not on the market yet. That one phrase, acknowledgement of my capability, fueled the ember of revenge. They had underestimated me, and I would show them the cost of that misjudgment. The texts from Mom arrived, requests to meet, explanations, feigned concern. I agreed, though Harper warned me, and I understood her wisdom. The coffee shop was quiet, the air rich with the scent of espresso and forced civility. Mom arrived, her cardigan the same robin's egg blue as the scarf, her perfume a haunting echo of my childhood. She smiled, complimented my eyes, and asked about my work, her questions veiled in subtle manipulation. I need to tell you something difficult, she said theatrically over the phone later. The investment is gone, the money vanished in a scam, and the family's fortune collapsed. And yet, my reaction wasn't relief at her misfortune, but a measured assessment of power. Where once I might have been drawn back into her orbit, I now saw the opportunity to dictate the terms of our interactions. Darren's message arrived, tentative, remorseful. We knew about Mom's investments before the eviction, he confessed. The betrayal was layered, systemic, and deliberate. And now, every move I made would be calculated, deliberate, and exacting. I researched senior housing for Mom, establishing boundaries, setting conditions, and turning her manipulations into a game of accountability. Therapy sessions were mandated. Financial support is limited. The power dynamic had shifted, subtly, irrevocably. By the time I signed the lease for my studio apartment, every step of the process, every measured act of kindness paired with firm boundaries, was part of a quiet, simmering revenge. Not violence, not public shaming, but the precise, elegant demonstration that the child they had once tried to diminish had grown into a woman they could neither control nor break. That night, Harper and I organized my remaining belongings. Old photographs, framed landscapes, and small mementos that had survived the garbage bags now occupied deliberate places in my new space. Each item, positioned with care, was a statement. I had survived. I had reclaimed what they tried to erase. And every step of this recovery, small apartments, tough negotiations, late-night planning, was a quiet testament to the revenge I would exact not through destruction, but by living fully, powerfully, and on my terms. The Seattle client called with new demands. I rose to the challenge, sleepless and determined. When Mom texted demanding presence and attention, I set conditions. I controlled the conversation, deciding who would benefit from my time and energy. And in doing so, I began to rebuild not just a life, but a legacy of strategic, quiet revenge. Each step I took was deliberate. Career advancement, financial independence, and the psychological satisfaction of autonomy over the very people who had sought to erase me. They had underestimated me, dismissed me, and betrayed me, but they had also unwittingly trained me to be sharper, more resilient, and more strategic than I ever would have been without their cruelty. The city lights of Seattle shimmered outside my apartment window, blurring against the darkness like scattered diamonds. I sat at my desk, the faint hum of the air conditioner punctuating the silence. My fingers hovered over the laptop keys, and for once, I allowed myself to breathe. Months of careful maneuvering had placed me in this precarious, electric balance between survival and retaliation. Mom's texts continued, polite, insistent, full of subtle manipulation disguised as maternal concern. Are you eating properly?
Don't forget to rest.
We miss you. Each word, a calculated probe, a test of control. But this time, I wasn't the same Kendra they had toyed with for decades. This time, I was ready to respond strategically. I pulled up the Seattle contract, reading the clauses carefully. The $2.3 million deal I had negotiated wasn't just a financial triumph, it was leverage. The client trusted me implicitly. My family had assumed that the eviction would destabilize me, that public humiliation would cripple my focus. They had underestimated my ability to compartmentalize, to harness rage into action. I smiled, faintly, a predator recognizing the prey's ignorance. 2 days later, the first move was mine. I had discovered through a casual LinkedIn post that Marcus had invested in a tech startup. The company, small but promising, was seeking a financial injection to survive an upcoming patent lawsuit. Marcus had bragged about the investment at dinner weeks ago, not knowing I was already plotting my quiet return. I drafted an anonymous tip to the startup's legal team, providing evidence of mismanagement in the subsidiary Marcus controlled. The lawsuit had escalated. Marcus panicked. He called me later, furious and frantic, though he didn't realize I had orchestrated the very storm he now faced. Meanwhile, I focused on solidifying my foothold in Seattle. Every client meeting was calculated, every negotiation a testament to my resilience. Harper, always at my side, helped map out the logistics of long-term revenge, not one born of impulse, but precision. She reminded me that patience was the most powerful weapon. The bigger the betrayal, the more devastating the comeback. Then came the unexpected twist. Dad's old attorney, Mr. Whitaker, reached out. His voice, gravelly but respectful, carried news I hadn't anticipated. Kendra, you need to know, the sale of the house wasn't entirely legal. There's a loophole your siblings overlooked. With proper documentation, you could challenge the sale and recover a portion of your inheritance. The revelation ignited a thrill I hadn't felt in years, a combination of vindication and anticipation. The first legal battles would begin quietly, behind the polished doors of corporate lawyers, with no dramatic public display. This was chess, not checkers. Each move measured, each response calculated. Mom called soon after, her voice syrupy, almost casual. Kendra, why don't you come visit for a few days? Let's talk. We can sort everything out. I accepted, but only on my terms. I booked the trip under the guise of reconciliation, while preparing dossiers and timelines, evidence of her manipulations and betrayals. Every conversation, every subtle nod or hesitation, would be meticulously documented. My apartment had become a war room, every stack of papers and folder a weapon in a psychological campaign designed for eventual confrontation. Arriving back at the family home, I noticed the subtle tension. Marcus and Elise avoided eye contact. Darren lingered near the doorway, pretending casual interest in the landscaping. Mom's smile, rehearsed and brittle, faltered ever so slightly when I stepped into the foyer. I had returned, not as the naive daughter who had been evicted, but as an architect of her own retribution. At dinner, polite conversation masked the undercurrent of power struggle. I had researched every family member's financial entanglements. I knew the loans Elise had taken without approval, the tax discrepancies Marcus had ignored, and the subtle ways Darren manipulated Mom's decisions. Each revelation became a potential tool, a calculated threat to be deployed when the moment demanded maximum effect. The first confrontation came subtly. Mom made a passing comment about the house sale, assuming I would react with the shock and submission she expected. Instead, I responded with quiet precision. I reviewed the documents. There are irregularities in the sale process. I've consulted legal counsel. The sale isn't final. The room froze. Marcus dropped his fork. Elise's eyes widened. Darren's jaw tightened. Mom, the orchestrator of my public humiliation, felt the first tremor of fear ripple through her composed exterior. The balance of power had shifted ever so slightly, and I had set the first domino in motion. Over the next week, I initiated my Seattle deal fully, traveling back and forth, meticulously separating my professional triumphs from the family drama. Each client meeting, each signature on a contract, reinforced my independence. And each small victory in my career became a silent message to my family. They had tried to control me, and I had turned every ounce of betrayal into fuel for my ascent. Then came the psychological twist. Using the information I had compiled, I orchestrated casual conversations with Mom, planting seeds of doubt about her financial security, subtly referencing my legal findings. "It's a shame about that investment, isn't it?" I asked casually over coffee, tilting my head. I read somewhere that some assets weren't properly disclosed. The oversight could be costly. Mom tensed, her careful composure cracking. She hadn't anticipated that I would weaponize knowledge, leverage subtle intimidation, and assert dominance without raising my voice. Her world, once so controlled, had begun to wobble. Meanwhile, I began transforming my apartment into a symbol of empowerment. Every piece of furniture, every carefully curated item became a declaration of autonomy. No longer dependent on family resources or approval, I established routines, investments, and connections designed to ensure long-term stability and influence. By the third week, I had orchestrated a small financial maneuver, a subtle, strategic acquisition of shares in a company that Mom had heavily invested in, using an independent account. The irony was delicious. While she assumed my focus was solely on personal reconciliation, I was quietly inserting myself into her world, gaining leverage she could neither predict nor control. Late one night, Harper and I reviewed the strategy. "They think they've won," I said, eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. "But every move we've made is part of a larger plan. They're about to learn that betrayal has consequences." Harper nodded. "Timing is everything. They'll never see it coming." The thrill of power, the intoxicating blend of patience, strategy, and control saturated my senses. Every meeting, every subtle conversation, every professional triumph became ammunition in a campaign of intelligent, unrelenting revenge. My family had underestimated me at every turn. Now the game had shifted and I controlled the board. By the time I boarded the flight back to Seattle, the pieces were in motion. Mom, my siblings, the remnants of my former home. They were all unaware that their carefully constructed empire of control was teetering, ready to be dismantled not with noise or spectacle, but with precision, patience, and relentless strategy. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Free to reclaim my life, free to rebuild, and free to ensure that every betrayal they had inflicted would return to them in the form of calculated consequence. The seeds of revenge had been sown, quietly and inexorably, and the harvest would come, soon, devastating, and entirely on my terms. The chill of early morning hung in the air as I parked my car outside the familiar suburban street. The front gate, once a symbol of humiliation with its 15 black garbage bags, now appeared as a stage set for my carefully crafted finale. I had spent weeks preparing every detail, the legal challenges, financial maneuvers, and psychological strategies, all converging toward this day. I stepped onto the sidewalk, folders tucked under one arm, laptop bag on my shoulder, and a calm determination in my stride. Mom had no idea. Marcus, Elise, Darren, they were all about to discover that the girl they thought they had crushed had become a force they couldn't control. The first move was subtle, yet devastatingly effective. I had filed an official legal notice challenging the house sale on procedural grounds. Copies were sent not just to my mother, but to her financial advisors, the real estate company, and even the prospective buyers. The wording was precise, leaving no room for misinterpretation. The sale is contested due to a lack of required consent from all legal co-owners. Failure to respond appropriately may result in legal and financial liabilities. I walked up to the front door, key tucked safely in my coat pocket. Marcus opened it, expression wary. Elise lingered behind him, clutching her phone. Darren hovered near the staircase, pretending casual curiosity. "Morning," I said, voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of authority. I wanted to discuss the house sale. Mom appeared behind them, stepping forward, her practiced composure intact, or so she thought. I could see the flicker of unease in her eyes, the micro-expression she hadn't perfected. "Kendra, I thought we had moved past this," she said, voice carefully neutral. "Moved past it," I echoed, stepping into the foyer. "You sold our house, took advantage of my absence, manipulated my finances, and tried to erase me from the family narrative. I wouldn't call that moving past anything." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, words failing her for the first time in decades. I handed her the legal documents. "You'll need to respond to this. The buyers have been notified. Your advisors are aware. This isn't a threat, it's the reality of the situation you created." Marcus' face paled. Elise's hand trembled as she scrolled through an email on her phone. Darren's jaw tightened, his attempt at nonchalance crumbling. We, Mom began, but I held up a hand. "This isn't about emotion. It's about accountability." Then, I dropped the first bombshell in my private campaign of revenge, financial disclosure. Every fraudulent account Mom had opened, every unpaid bill tied to me, documents meticulously compiled, were now laid bare. I handed each sibling a folder, leaving nothing hidden. The room, once dominated by their assumed superiority, felt suffocating. "You did all of this?" Marcus asked, voice breaking. You knew?" "I knew enough," I replied, my tone icy. "Enough to protect myself and ensure consequences for betrayal." Elise tried to interject, but I continued, moving toward the living room where their laughter and confidence had once ruled. "You plan my eviction while I closed the biggest deal of my career. You leveraged my absence to celebrate your gains. But I've rebuilt everything, career, independence, resources, without relying on any of you." Mom's face hardened. "Kendra, we did it for your good. You don't understand." I cut her off, calm, measured, each word a scalpel. Love doesn't humiliate, manipulate, or steal. Love doesn't hide behind justifications while you benefit at someone else's expense. What you call tough love is selfishness, and I'm done letting it define me. I could see the fear now, the very real acknowledgement that the balance of power had shifted irreversibly. The eviction, the garbage bags, the credit manipulation, all their efforts to control me had been turned against them, methodically, strategically. Over the next few days, I executed the final moves in my campaign. I leveraged the legal challenge to negotiate a settlement that not only reinstated my rightful share of the house proceeds, but also included compensation for the financial damages caused by Mom's identity fraud. The payments, deposited directly into accounts under my control, ensured independence and security. Simultaneously, I strengthened my career. The Seattle client expanded our contract, resulting in a $3.5 million deal. My professional reputation soared. Invitations for keynote speeches and panel discussions flooded in, each opportunity reinforcing my autonomy and authority. Mom, Marcus, Elise, and Darren were forced into a defensive position, publicly and privately. Every attempt at justification was countered with calm, documented evidence. Every emotional manipulation failed against the foundation of my independence and preparedness. Then came the final act, a calculated psychological reminder. I sent a simple photo to the family group chat, 15 black garbage bags, neatly lined at the gate, the image time-stamped from that fateful eviction day. No caption, no commentary. Silence. Then, one by one, messages trickled in. I didn't realize. We underestimated you. Kendra. I didn't reply. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about cruelty. It was about restoring balance, asserting boundaries, and reclaiming dignity. Finally, I turned my attention to the future. My new condo became a haven, not just physically, but psychologically. Every corner was curated to remind me of my resilience. The framed photograph of the garbage bags now hung prominently in my office, not as a monument to betrayal, but as a testament to survival and empowerment. I initiated a small fund for young adults displaced by family crises, using a portion of my promotion bonuses. The fund, anonymous at first, quickly grew through local contributions. Each success story reminded me that transformation and revenge weren't mutually exclusive. Justice could be measured not only in retaliation, but in the creation of something meaningful. Months later, Mom called. This time, there was no manipulation, no subtle demand. Just a tentative voice, softened by consequence. Kendra, I see now. I made mistakes. I listened, without anger, without bitterness. The wounds of betrayal remained, but they no longer controlled me. I offered boundaries, clarity, and accountability, not forgiveness, not unconditional acceptance. The balance of power had shifted permanently, and I was finally free. As I closed the call, I glanced at the photograph again. The memory of humiliation had transformed into a tool, a marker of strength. The lesson was clear. Revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about reclaiming yourself. Outside, the city lights twinkled, and I felt a lightness in my chest, an unburdened joy. The storm had passed. The house was gone, the betrayal exposed, and my future lay ahead, shaped by my own hands. And yet, in the quiet corners of my mind, a small, thrilling thought lingered, the faintest edge of suspense. There was still more to uncover, more truths yet to be revealed, and I would be ready when they emerged. The story didn't end with vengeance alone. It ended with empowerment, autonomy, and the subtle, lingering promise that the game, though momentarily paused, was never truly over.